Cape Town is a unique city known for its natural beauty and rich history. It's also where you can find adventure and an incredible food scene. I recently got to spend 3 wonderful weeks there, traveling with 2 friends and a packed agenda. And after lots of time spent on research, planning calls, and packing, we were off. Our trip broke down into 3 parts: our time exploring the city of Cape Town, a 5-day road trip through the famous garden route through some of the most beautiful roads in the world, and indulging over several days in the town of Stellenbosch and the Cape Winelands. I'm always up for adventure and experiences that feel like a treat, and this trip had it all. If you're looking to go for yourself, I've got some ideas for you, so let me show you how it all went down.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to finally welcome you to Cape Town, where the local time is 6:20.
The first part of our stay was in the neighborhood of Camps Bay, which was one of my favorite areas in all of Cape Town.
That is so beautiful.
Camps Bay has a relaxed, upscale feel and is nestled on all sides by the most incredible nature. Nearby mountains include Table Mountain, Lion's Head, and the 12 Apostles Peaks.
My goodness, just look at this view behind me.
To the west is the Atlantic Ocean and a gorgeous stretch of golden white sand beach. Camps Bay has a vibrant beachfront, which reminded me of something like a Santa Monica or Orange County. During our first few days, we explored the neighborhood and got that all-important time with the sun and beach.
Whew, it is cold. It is cold.
Beyond the beach, Camps Bay is also known for its amazing restaurants, trendy cafes, and bars. For us, Camps Bay served as a great central hub. Everything we needed was in the area, it was by the beach, and the major attractions in the city were never that far away, so I was super happy to stay there. And after getting settled, we were off to explore. So as you start researching for things to do in Cape Town, one of the first things you'll come across is visiting Table Mountain. It's an iconic landmark with breathtaking views of Cape Town and the Atlantic Ocean, and is probably the most popular attraction in the city. We went up using the gondola. The gondola ride itself was kind of cool. You get views all around because the whole thing rotates. Not the gondola itself, funny enough, but the gondola floor. At around 3,500 feet, Table Mountain is the highest peak in Cape Town, and up top you see incredibly far. Towards the north, there's Signal Hill and Cape Town's harbor area, and to the west, Camps Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. There was something interesting about being so high up that you start to lose perspective of how far things really are. The mountaintop itself is a rugged sandstone landscape. When you don't see over the edge, you almost forget how high up you really are. Besides the gondola, there's also an option to hike up Table Mountain, though I understand it takes at least a couple of hours, and that was not on my plan to do. If you're into hiking though, then I absolutely have to recommend going up Lion's Head. Lion's Head is located between Table Mountain and the neighboring Signal Hill. It's nearly 2,200 feet above sea level, so not nearly as high as Table Mountain, but still has views over much of the city.
Oh, what a view.
Climbing Lion's Head was one of my favorite experiences on the trip, but it might not be for everyone. There's no gondola going up, and it's a pretty physical hike. The hike starts off pretty easy with a gentle and consistent climb. But as you start making your way up, the path starts to get a bit more challenging and uneven. One of the best parts of the hike was getting to see Cape Town from many different angles, and that's because the trail actually spirals up the mountain as you make your way to the top of Lion's Head. At one point, you'll be given 2 options: the recommended path, which is mostly the same as before, and a more adventurous way where you climb up a stretch of about 30 to 40 feet with the help of staples and chains, which of course I had to do. That part for sure will not be for everyone. It's a narrow passage and only one person can go up at a time. You'll need some strength and agility to hoist yourself up and not be too afraid of heights. But look at these views on the way up though. Altogether, Lion's Head took about an hour to go up and another to go back down. It's a challenge, no doubt about it, but the panoramic view at the top and the experience getting there, I think makes it worth it. For me, between Table Mountain and Lion's Head, if I could have only done one, I would have done Lion's Head. Just remember to wear sunscreen, bring a hat, and lots of water.
Not that bad. I'll have to check how much time I took to actually do it. It definitely is a workout. I took the harder way route with the staples and the chains. It was fine. A lot of work though. When we were here earlier, like, oh, it's not that bad.
The Neighbourgoods Market was a cool spot to spend a few hours on a nice afternoon. It takes place on weekends at the old biscuit mill, which is a converted biscuit factory from 1900 and is now a modernized mixed-use space. It's a popular hangout where local artists and designers sell their goods, and where you can find food stalls covering every type of cuisine under the sun.
Yeah, let's get some booze.
I got some snacks, drinks, did some shopping, all the while a DJ was spinning in the background. It was good vibes all around, and I totally recommend checking it out. We learned more about South Africa's past with a tour of Robben Island. Robben Island is a UNESCO heritage site located 7 kilometers north of Cape Town and has a long history of being a prison. Notably, it was where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 18 years before the fall of apartheid, and has since become a symbol of the triumph of democracy and freedom over oppression. Lastly, we visited the Bo-Kaap neighborhood, which is situated on the slopes of Signal Hill. It's a historic center of Muslim culture in Cape Town and is very recognizable for its distinctive architecture and vividly colorful houses. So all these activities would make anyone hungry, and at this point I need to talk about Cape Town's food scene, which was one of the most pleasant surprises for me on this trip. Cape Town is known for its vibrant and diverse food scene that is internationally recognized for its fusion of flavors, fresh ingredients, and innovative culinary techniques.
We have some langostinos, they're very soft and sweet, they're from Mozambique. Then we have some crayfish, soft juicy sweet meat inside.
The Condé Nast Traveler once named Cape Town as the #1 food city, and TripAdvisor called Cape Town one of the best food destinations in 2023.
Oh wow, it's tasty.
I don't think we had a single bad meal on this trip, and a pleasant surprise was finding out that nearly every meal on this trip cost roughly half of what I would have paid back in Canada, if not less. Along with the great meals, you can also easily find a great selection of wine, particularly those from South Africa's wine region, which I'll go into more detail later. But first, let me show you where we stayed. Because we were mostly traveling as a group of 3 and we wanted a bit of room, it made more sense for us to get an Airbnb as opposed to a hotel. And we got pretty lucky there too. Our first place was the Crystal Apartment in Camps Bay. Even though it was a solid 15-minute walk uphill from the beach, it came with a pool and our apartment was pretty spacious. If you want to look into it, I'll leave a link to their direct booking website in the description below. Our second Airbnb was also in Camps Bay and was in a beautiful beachside Art Deco building that was also really comfortable. It was really nice being able to hear the ocean from our front window, and the view from my room looked out into Table Mountain. Lastly, in Cape Town, we got pretty lucky with a townhouse in the De Waterkant area. It was spacious, clean, and nicely decorated, and its rooftop deck also came with an incredible view. On average, with these 3 locations, we paid about 130 Canadian, or about 100 US each per night, which to me felt very reasonable for what we got, but I also found plenty of options above and below that for whatever fits your budget. Alright, moving on. The second part of our trip was spending 5 days going through the famous Garden Route, which covers the southern coastal area of South Africa and is another vacation experience closely associated with visiting Cape Town. Now, technically, the Garden Route is generally considered to be the 300-kilometer stretch of coast, starting from Mossel Bay in the west to Port Elizabeth in the east. But because we needed to rent a car from Cape Town in order to get there, make a few stops along the way, and return to Cape Town once we were done, our whole Garden Route road trip ended up being closer to about 1,200 kilometers in the end. I can't go over everything about the Garden Route, but here are a few of my highlights and some things I think you should keep in mind if you go. The first part of our road trip leaving Cape Town was going for a drive through the stunning coastal highway of Chapman's Peak. Chapman's Peak is known as one of the most beautiful drives in the world, with breathtaking vistas all along the winding road, with the Atlantic Ocean as your backdrop. There are plenty of spots to pull over if you're looking to get that perfect shot. We then made our way further south towards the Cape Peninsula and stopped in Simonstown, which is on the western side of False Bay. This was where we had lunch before seeing one of my favorite things from this whole trip, the African penguins of Boulders Beach. We got there by heading to the Boulders Visitor Center in Simonstown, where there are boardwalks that bring you to several viewing points where hundreds of cute little African penguins are just chilling out. They're the most adorable creatures. They seem completely unbothered by people gawking and taking photos of them, me included, and sometimes they stare back at you with these curious expressions that I can't get over. It's definitely a rare opportunity getting to see penguins up close like this in their natural habitat. Now, you can't actually touch the penguins, but you can get really close to them. If you're interested in seeing these penguins but aren't able to go to the garden route, you can do this as a day trip from Cape Town. And after saying bye to the penguins, we hit the road again and made our way around the False Bay. The whole area and the towns along the coast are really quite beautiful and charming, and I think it'd be an interesting place to stay for a few days. After a few more hours, we stopped at a town called Hermanus and stayed for the night. We mostly did this so that we could break up the trip and be ready for a full day of driving the next day. We then made it to our main destination, the town of Plettenberg Bay. We spent our time checking out the beach and a couple of afternoons poolside at the Beacon Island Resort. Like many of the towns along the garden route, Plettenberg Bay had a relaxed feel of a small beach town. It had a few great restaurants and was a very comfortable place to stay for a few days. One day we took a drive out to the nearby town of Knysna and checked out the Knysna Heads, which is a set of sandstone cliffs where the Knysna Lagoon meets the Indian Ocean. And afterwards, we had lunch at the East Head Cafe, which was right by the water, and where they also happened to serve the largest slice of lemon meringue pie I'd ever seen. So here are a few things I'd suggest keeping in mind if you're looking to plan your own garden route trip. First, as I touched on, driving is going to be a big part of your garden route experience. You'll absolutely need a car to get around, and your total time on the road might be what limits how much of the garden route you'll get to see and do. Parts of the drive can be beautiful though. By taking the R62 road, we crossed the Boesmapos Wilderness area and the Neighbourgoods Pass. This added a couple of hours to our trip, but gave us gorgeous views of the hills and winding mountain passes. Thankfully, the roads and highways along the garden route were all very well maintained and easy to navigate. You might only need to watch out for the occasional wildlife. Second, while it was tempting to consider staying at the different towns as we went along the route, I'd suggest considering choosing one of the towns to be your home base and visiting the other towns and attractions as day trips. That's because many of the places along the route are fairly close to one another. Lastly, while there were lots of activities to explore along the garden route, the towns can sometimes feel a little sleepy and quiet, even during the day. So while it's great if you're looking to chill, if you're looking for lots of nightlife, this might not be it. So for the final stretch of our trip, we spent 4 days enjoying ourselves in the town of Stellenbosch in the heart of the Cape Winelands. Stellenbosch is a charming town surrounded by breathtaking mountains, lush vineyards, and features Cape Dutch architecture. The town dates back to the 17th century and is now considered one of the most important wine regions in South Africa due to a combination of its fertile soil and its Mediterranean climate of hot, dry summers and cool, wet winters. It is home to more than 150 wineries, and its diverse environmental qualities allow for the cultivation of a wide variety of grapes, including Chenin Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, and Pinotage, which is a grape variety unique to South Africa. We got to Stellenbosch by taking a 40-minute Uber from Cape Town, and unless you particularly want to drive through the area, I'd suggest skipping the rental car since you can get around with Ubers there. There are a number of wine tours offered in Stellenbosch. We went with one called Vine Hopper, which offered several types of tours. We went with their Eastern route option, which essentially offered a driver who brought us up to 5 wineries over 6 hours. Our group decided to do 4 instead and give ourselves more time at each. So here's how it went down. First was Lanzerac, which was established in 1692. It's located on a restored Cape Dutch farmstead and is one of the oldest wine farms in the Cape. We'd learned that they are known for a chocolate and wine pairing, as well as being the home of the world's first bottled Pinotage.
I like it. Are these all made on the grounds here?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
MCC is a method called Cap Classic. So since it's originated from France, we are not allowed to call it champagne when it comes to the law of wine. Just like...
And on to the next.
Next was Neil Ellis, which was one of my favorites of the day. Neil Ellis had its beginnings in the early 1980s and is located on a very cool-looking modern wine farm.
This is a beautiful space.
Oh, it's amazing.
We learned about their wines while looking at their views of the Simonsberg mountain.
Okay, so this is the Amica. It's 100% Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes.
Grapes come from Jonkershoek Valley.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a lot.
Please do enjoy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
This was exactly the kind of backdrop that I have in mind when I think of a luxurious wine tasting.
Let's do it.
So for you, sir,
Yes.
the Cabernet Merlot. So the grapes comes from different areas in Stellenbosch. So 64.
Okay. Boschendal.
We then stopped by Boschendal, another one of the oldest wine estates in South Africa, which was founded in 1685. Boschendal is in a large, beautiful estate and has several areas open to the public, which included a swanky gift shop, a garden, and a deli. Here I had the sparkling wine tasting, which was delicious.
And then your second one, sir, is your rosé.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, one more.
Last was Sorkvliet, which has buildings on its estate dating back to 1692. Their focus is on the Bordeaux variety of wine, Cabernet Sauvignons, Cabernet Franc, Malbecs, and Merlots. As with the other stops, Sorkvliet's estate is also beautiful, and they often host weddings. Altogether, this was a great day, and I'd recommend the company. Our driver was friendly, and we had some nice company along for the day. So it's not all wine in Stellenbosch, the food is great too, and I'll mention one restaurant in particular that really stood out, the Fat Butcher. Like its name suggests, the Fat Butcher focuses on meat, and all their beef is pasture-raised and grain-fed. Their outdoor space was very charming, and their knowledgeable server walked us through their variety of cuts in thorough detail.
It's dry aged there for 2.5 weeks and then wet age for 4.5 weeks. So you can immediately see the color difference in this dry aging one compared to the fillet.
For anyone who enjoys their steak, I would definitely recommend coming. But we didn't stay in Stellenbosch our whole time. One day, we took a half-hour drive to the neighboring town of Franschhoek and ate at a very special restaurant called La Petite Colombe. La Petite Colombe is the sister restaurant of the 3 Michelin-star La Colombe in Cape Town. It's located on the grounds of the 5-star hotel of the Lou Estates. After entering through their front gate, you're greeted by large-scale sculptures by South African artists along its gardens. You know the property is on another level when there's a helipad on site. Inside, La Petite Colombe is bright and open and features natural textures of stone, wood, and hints of metal. Every corner of the space is thoughtfully decorated. Lunch was served over 9 courses. Ingredients included such things as oysters, smoked fish, and mussel confit. There was a dish of quail, langoustine, and cauliflower tandoori, and a petit poussin with carrot and pine nuts. Every dish was delicious and beautifully presented, and each paired with a regional wine. Dessert was a vanilla panna cotta with gooseberry, and teeny tiny treats served on an adorable trolley. And before leaving, we took a stroll through the gardens of their estate grounds. Our time in Stellenbosch marked the end of our trip, and before wrapping up, I wanted to mention one thing that might help if you're traveling to South Africa for the first time. So the power went out last night around midnight. It's something I'm still having to learn about, load shedding. It's what we in North America would call rolling blackouts. Power is systematically rationed between different electrical grids across the country, with outages that can last several hours. These periods of outages are what's known as load shedding, and is an aspect of being in South Africa that I'd encourage you to learn more about if you're planning on visiting there. Load shedding happens on a schedule, and there are apps available to let you know when the power will be down. I'll link to one below. So I hope that was helpful to anyone thinking of visiting Cape Town for the first time. If you've been to any of these places, what did you think? Thanks for watching and consider subscribing.